A few weeks ago, I embarked on a solo adventure to a small town, eager to explore the nearby trails and escape the hustle and bustle of city life. I rented an Airbnb townhouse, unaware of the eerie experience that awaited me. The 9-hour drive left me exhausted, and by the time I arrived, it was getting late. As I stepped out of my car, I noticed the townhouse was on a street lined with similar homes, but the dim lighting and eerie silence made me feel like I was the only one around. I texted the owner to let them know I'd arrived, and shortly after, a man appeared from around the corner with a smile on his face. He introduced himself as the Airbnb host, John, and let me in, mentioning he'd be next door if I needed anything. I found it odd that he lived so close, but I tried to brush it off. As I settled in, I noticed something off. The bedroom felt like it had been tampered with, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what was different. I tried to shake off the feeling and went to bed, but the unease lingered. The next day, I hiked for hours, returning to the townhouse at 7 p.m., but the strange feeling returned. I searched the house, but nothing seemed out of place. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but the sense of unease persisted. As night fell, I lay in bed, struggling to sleep. Then, around 1 a.m., I heard a door creak open across the house. It sounded intentional, like someone was trying to be quiet. I sat up, my heart racing, and cracked open the bedroom door. The dim glow of the porch light revealed the front door was partially open. I locked my door and called the police, trying to remain quiet. That's when I saw the shadowy outline of someone standing outside my room. I froze, holding my breath until they vanished. I waited for what felt like an eternity, my ears straining to pick up any sound. Suddenly, I heard footsteps outside my room, heavy and deliberate. They stopped outside my door, and I could feel a presence lurking just beyond the threshold. My heart raced as I waited for the door to creak open, but it never did. The silence was oppressive, and I knew I had to act. I crept out of bed and made my way to the living room, my eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. That's when I saw it. A shadowy figure standing just beyond the front door, partially hidden by the curtain. My heart skipped a beat as I realized I was face to face with the intruder. I tried to scream, but my voice was frozen in my throat. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept watching me with an unblinking gaze. That's when the police arrived, their sirens shattering the silence. The figure vanished, and I collapsed onto the couch, my heart still racing. The officers searched the house, but there was no sign of the intruder. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. As I waited for the police to finish their investigation, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see the shadowy figure lurking in the corner, but there was never anyone there. The police left, and I was left alone in the townhouse, my nerves still on edge. I knew I had to get out of there, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being stalked. I packed my bags and left, never looking back. Even now, the memory sends chills down my spine. I can't help but wonder if the intentions were sinister, and if the perpetrator is still out there, watching and waiting. The experience left me with a sense of vulnerability and a newfound appreciation for the importance of safety and security.
Four years ago, I rented an Airbnb for the holidays. I was seeing my family for the week of Christmas, so I got a place just a few miles away. When I arrived on December 20th, everything was exactly as I thought it would be. The place was a very regular house in a very normal neighborhood. Overall, I was satisfied. I'd gotten there around 6 o'clock on that first day, though, and I didn't feel like going out to see anyone until I'd gotten a good night's rest. So I stayed in and relaxed for the rest of the night, watching some TV and even getting a little bit of work done as well. I got in bed just before 10 o'clock and fell asleep. But in the middle of the night, I slowly woke up to a noise coming from downstairs. I was still half asleep and didn't even check the time, but it sounded like a few small thumps against the wall coming from somewhere in the house. As I listened to the noises, I didn't feel worried or anything, but rather just thought that it was the house making these sounds. I only stayed awake for a minute before drifting into sleep again, and I don't recall waking up any other time during the night. By morning, I had forgotten and didn't even think about those noises again. I was pretty sure it was just the HVAC unit or something anyway. I let my family know I'd made it into town, and we got our plans set for dinner at their place. I relaxed at the Airbnb for the whole morning and afternoon until I was ready to head out. I grabbed my bag and keys, then walked up to the front door to exit the house. But when I opened it, I was face to face with a man standing right in front of me on the porch. It completely caught me off guard, and I just stood there looking at him for a second before even saying anything. "Can I help you?" I asked the man. He didn't knock or ring the doorbell, which made me start thinking about how long he could have been standing there and just why he was there to begin with. And he didn't respond to my question, though, and instead just nodded, then walked away. I watched him go down to the sidewalk and just continue walking down the street until he was gone. I can't see any situation where this wouldn't be strange and creepy. Why was he at the Airbnb? And for how long was he standing there without knocking? I made sure the place was locked up, then drove to my parents' house for dinner with the family. I brought up the situation as an interesting story, and everyone else seemed to think it was just as creepy as I thought. Dinner was still nice, and we had plenty of other great conversations, catching up on life and everything. But that whole night, I couldn't stop thinking about that man and if my things I'd left at the Airbnb were going to be stolen or something. I ended up leaving the dinner gathering around 9 o'clock and getting back to the Airbnb 15 minutes later. I parked in the driveway and walked up to the front door looking around for any obvious signs of someone having been there while I was gone, but I didn't see anything. I unlocked the door and stepped in. I walked down to the end of the hallway and into the kitchen, dropping my keys and bag on the counter. But then there was a sudden thump. It was just the same as the ones I'd heard the previous night, but now that I was downstairs, it was far louder and coming from one side of the house. I slowly stepped into the room near where the sound was coming from, but then the thump came again from a door right next to me. I jumped back, getting a surge of adrenaline, and then after staring at the door for a few seconds, I could hear the faint sound of heavy breathing from the other side. I grabbed my keys and ran for my car. I still didn't know exactly what was going on, but I was not going to stay to find out on my own. I called 911 and waited for them to arrive. When they did, I watched them go in and search for a few minutes, and then they came out and told me something horrifying. The door the person was behind was the garage door, which showed signs of distress, from the person likely trying to break the lock and get inside. Unknown to me, there was a side door connected to the garage that led outside, which had been left unlocked by whoever had stayed there before me. I didn't ever plan to use the garage, so I never checked it. Whether the man I'd seen on the porch was the same person that was in the garage is unknown, but just knowing that I was asleep while someone was right below me trying to break into the house is terrifying. I didn't stay at the Airbnb again and instead moved to a hotel for the rest of the week. Even 4 years later, I still think about that terrifying experience and wonder what the person's intentions were.
Last New Year's Eve, my two friends, Jason and Christian, and I decided to rent a secluded cabin on the outskirts of town through Airbnb. We wanted a chill night in, away from the chaos of parties. The cabin was surrounded by similar houses, but they were spaced far apart, giving us a sense of isolation. As we settled in, we noticed the cabin was a bit eerie. The wood creaked, and the fireplace seemed to groan when we lit it. But we brushed it off, thinking it was just the old cabin settling. Around 6 p.m., we heard a knock at the door. I answered it, finding a disgruntled man who warned us to keep the noise down. His tone was threatening, and I felt uneasy. I closed the door, and he banged on it again, but I ignored him. "What was that about?" Jason asked, noticing my concern. "Just some weird guy telling us to keep it down," I replied, trying to play it off. But the encounter left us all on edge. We tried to shake it off and enjoy our evening, watching a movie and playing games on Jason's Switch. But the tension lingered. As midnight approached, we heard a loud crash and glass shattering outside. We rushed to the window to see the same man from earlier, now holding a metal baseball bat and standing by Christian's car, which had a shattered windshield. He was pacing and seemed psychotic. "What the hell?" Christian exclaimed, his voice shaking with anger. The man started yelling at us, his words incoherent but his rage palpable. We were frozen in fear, unsure of what to do next. Christian, always the bold one, stormed outside to confront him. But before we could stop him, a gunshot rang out. I froze, thinking the worst, but Christian sprinted back inside and we locked the door behind him. More shots hit the cabin and the man swung the bat against the door, the sound echoing through the night. We huddled together, terrified, as the man's rampage continued. Suddenly the attack stopped, and an eerie silence fell over the cabin. We waited, holding our breath, wondering if the man had left or was just lurking outside, waiting for his next move. After what felt like an eternity, we heard the sound of footsteps fading into the distance. We breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was over. But as we tried to calm down, we realized that the man had left something behind. A small note on the doorstep, scrawled with a menacing message. "You'll never leave this place alive." Our blood ran cold as we realized we were trapped in the cabin with a madman on the loose. We called the police, but they seemed to take forever to arrive. Finally, they came and we were escorted out of the cabin, shaken, but alive. The investigation that followed revealed that the man was not a neighbor, and his identity and motives remain unknown to this day. It was a terrifying encounter that could have ended in tragedy. We learned that sometimes the most isolated places can be the most dangerous, and that some nightmares can haunt you long after the night is over.